They found her under broken metal and cold stars. No one knew her name. She could not stand. The whole crew passed her by like she was nothing. Then one man stopped. He looked at the child and saw a small life still fighting. He knelt. That one knee changed everything. The outpost on Vireo 7 was a thin line of metal and light on a dead moon. Nights were long and the wind carried sharp dust. People worked by shifts. They scanned, they mined, they ate, and then they slept. Rules kept them safe. Rules kept them moving. Trouble from the stars cost lives and supplies. So the outpost learned to look away. A patrol found the small tracks first. They were not human prints. They were tiny, like someone with small feet had walked across cold rock. The tracks led to a crater rim. In the center, huddled against a bent shard of hull, sat a child. She was thin as glass and pale like moon ash. Her hair lay in a fine sweep across her forehead. Her eyes were very large. She had no shoes. When she tried to stand, her legs folded wrong. Her breath came in short, shallow pulls. The patrol kept distance. They called the captain. The captain sent orders, document, leave supplies, move on. The outpost had laws about strangers. No surprise guests. No trouble. People were afraid of disease. They were afraid of spies. They were afraid of wasting food. Ethan Walker did not work on the patrol. He worked in the kitchen. His hands were cracked from cold steam and old scars. He had spent nights alone on supply runs. He had seen bad things and kept his face quiet. When he heard about the child, he left his pot and went down the path. When Ethan first saw her, he felt a strange tug like a bell in the chest. She was smaller than he thought from the report. She looked like someone who had been blown from home. Her mouth tried to shape words he did not know. She reached one small hand toward him. Her fingers were thin as a bird's foot. Most of the crew wanted to leave her. The captain said the outpost could not afford risk. But Ethan thought of a boy he had known once on Earth, a child who had needed help and never got it. He could not look away. Ethan took off his jacket and wrapped it across her shoulders. He offered her a warm drink from a metal cup. She sipped slowly, like she had not known warmth for a long time. The cup trembled in her small hands. He carried her to the med bay. The room smelled of clean metal and soft lights. Dr. Maya Brooks ran the bay. She was direct and good at saving people. She scanned the child with the med AI. The screen showed broken bones and old burns. The hip frame looked crushed. Nerves showed damage. Maya said the words carefully, "If we leave this, she will not walk again." Ethan stayed. He sat on the floor and held the child's hand. She did not speak English. Her sounds were quick and low. She watched Ethan with sharp eyes, like she was learning the shape of a person. When the med AI finished the scan, it linked to the outpost computer. The log showed the child's life in pieces: a damaged vessel, a fall, long travel. No ID. No record in district files. The captain paced in a small circle and rubbed the back of his neck. Supplies were thin. A stranger with a long recovery meant more food, more work, more risk. Ethan did not argue with charts. He argued with his hands. He signed away his own ration credits. He took extra shifts. He promised to clean the pipes and fix cooking stoves. He told Maya he would watch the child day and night. He needed a name for the child. He picked one that felt soft and small. He said, "Lila." The child listened. She touched the syllable on her lips and then smiled faintly. That smile made something in Ethan loosen. He had no family left that mattered now. Lila fit into the small hollow in his life. In the nights that followed, Ethan sat in the med bay and told small stories. He told her about rain on Earth and about a cat that had once slept on his feet. He spoke slowly. She repeated a few words, water, home, walk. Her voice was a bird song in an empty room. On the third night, while the outpost hummed with sleeping machines, the comm board blinked. It started as a single tone under the sound of the ventilation. Ethan heard it and froze. The board shone with an unknown signature. A ship was near. The message that came in was cold and short. The words on the screen read slow and sharp. Return the subject. Ethan felt the letters like a hand on his shoulder. He looked at Lila. She slept in a thin blanket. Her small chest rose and fell. He did not know what the message meant. He did not know if the ship had a right to her. He only knew her small fingers had tightened on his thumb while she slept. The captain called a meeting. Voices lifted in the mess hall. Some said hand her over and be done. Some said hide her and risk war. The Med-AI logged the message and added a caution, potential claim detected. Unknown consequences. Outside, under the dead sky, a dark dot grew larger. The outpost lights shivered. Ethan felt a cold that had nothing to do with wind. He looked at the child who could not walk and knew, in the bone of his hands, that the next step would change everything. He would have to choose. The comm board flashed one more line, clear and final, as the room fell very quiet. Do not take her. Healers said she would never walk. Machines said the bone was broken beyond repair. But a quiet man kept coming back. Hope does not shout. Sometimes it is a hand that will not let go. The med bay smelled like metal and warm gel. Light panels hummed above beds. Dr. Maya Brooks moved with quick, careful hands. She had saved miners from collapse and ship crews from cold. When she saw the scans of the little alien, she did not hide the truth. The child's hip was crushed. Nerve lines were scarred. The Med-AI wrote one line on the screen in small letters, limited mobility likely. Ethan read the line and let it sit in his throat. He could read charts. He had fixed engines and run the supplies. But numbers could not hold a small hand. He had watched Lila look at light and try to say a word. Her lips made soft sounds he could not match. He wrapped her in a blanket and sat beside her while Maya spoke in careful words. We can fit a neural stimulator, Maya said. We have the old kit used on long-haul crews. It might help regrow nerve paths. But it is not a sure thing. It is slow. It will hurt. Ethan closed his eyes and thought of the boy from Earth he had once failed to help. He had a debt to that memory. He signed ration credits. He took extra hours in the kitchen. He promised to cover the mining shifts and sweep the mess. He begged Maya to try. Maya agreed, but warned him hard. If she cries, you hold her. If she breaks, we stop. We cannot risk her life on a hope that is empty. Ethan nodded. He would do the holding. The therapy began with small things. Warm compresses. Tiny electric pulses from a worn device. Soft massages across the thigh where the bone had failed. At first, Lila screamed. Sounds tore from her like frightened birds. Ethan sat with her and spoke slowly, one English word at a time, and a few sounds she gave back. He hummed a thin tune from the old music box, and she smiled through pain once. The Med-AI logged every twitch, muscle micro-response detected. It looked small on the screen, like a single bright pixel in a night sky. But to Ethan, that pixel meant a path. Days melted into one another. Miners argued in the mess hall. Work slowed. Some blamed Ethan. She is a danger, said a foreman. She could bring trouble. The captain kept balance. Supplies were tight. Everyone counted rations like coins. But the people who worked late at night in the scrub room, engineers, cooks, a few nurses, saw Lila when she could not hide. They watched a small creature learn to lift a spoon and to laugh when a dust mote moved like a tiny star. Ethan taught her simple words. Water. Safe. Walk. Each sounded new in her mouth. She tried to move and sometimes grinned when a toe twitched. Her small victories were private and bright. Maya kept records and frowned at charts, but she also made small notes. Patient chose will to continue. As therapy went on, a new problem arrived in a flat, mechanical tone. The comm board pulsed with unread messages. A signature kept repeating from a ship far off. The messages were short, cold. Return the subject. You are in violation. Comply. The words made the air thin. The captain held a short meeting. He wanted to avoid a fight. The ship that sent the messages had a name and a sigil and an authority that felt like an iron gate. Its people claimed the child by law. Their paper looked old and strong. They said Lila was theirs by blood and by culture. They wanted her back. Rumors floated through the outpost like loose dust. Some said the ship wanted the child for study. Others said they wanted her as property. Fear traveled faster than the truth. A few cabins were locked. Mothers kept children inside. The Med AI tested again and sent a report with quiet words, trace markers present. Function unknown. Ethan held Lila in the dim hours and listened to the hum of a sleeping outpost. He felt the pressure of a choice. Hand her over and end any chance she might have here. Or protect her and risk anger from a people with ships. He thought of the small hand that had gripped his thumb the first night. He thought of the music box and a river he had never seen but had described in soft words. One night, while Ethan slept in a chair in the med bay, a distant noise woke him. The landing lights blinked outside like a far heartbeat. He rubbed his eyes and walked to the bay window, where the dark stretched like a cloth. On the pad, a figure moved with the slow grace of someone who knew the rules of landing. Two shapes stepped from a low shuttle and walked toward the outpost under the thin light. Ethan felt the blood move in his neck. He grabbed a flashlight and crept to the back door. The pad was close enough that he could see helmets and the way the suits sealed at the neck. They were not human. Their armor had clean lines and metal that ate the light. One of them stopped and turned its head. Ethan froze. Under the visor, he saw a face he did not expect. The eyes were the same color as Lila's. They were large and dark and filled with a slow, distant sorrow. For 1 second, the stranger looked like the child in a larger body. The stranger raised one hand and tapped his wrist in a motion that seemed like a signal. A voice came over the comm, clear and cold, "We have come for our subject." Ethan swallowed hard and felt his hands tighten around the flashlight. He thought of the Med AI's charts, the small muscle replies, the spoon Lila had learned to hold. He thought of rivers and music boxes and promises made in a dim medbay. He pushed the door open, and the cold air hit him like a slap. Footsteps fell on metal. The two strangers walked with the confidence of those who believe the law is on their side. Ethan stepped into the light. The stranger in the lead tilted his head and said in a voice that made the hair rise on Ethan's arms, a line the Med AI could not translate. But it needed no translation. It was clear and final. She is ours. They came with papers and cold voices. They brought a story written in steel and law. When the hall filled with voices, Ethan stood and spoke from his heart. Laws can be loud. Quiet hands sometimes change louder things. The strangers arrived at the hearing in clean suits that did not bend. Their leader walked with steady steps. He called himself Commander Hale. He spoke in a voice that moved like a ruler across a table, exact, flat, and not warm. He showed a hollow with a seal and a line of code no one on the outpost had seen before. The hollow said, "This child belonged to their people." Captain Torres read the papers and frowned. The documents looked real. The seal looked old. The strangers said the child was a citizen of a distant world and had been carried away during a raid. They wanted her returned. They wanted it quiet. The hearing filled the mess hall. Miners leaned on dusty shoulders. Engineers stood with grease under their nails. The traders in the corner looked to keep peace and profit. Ethan sat with Lila on his lap. She watched the visitors with small bright eyes. She did not understand the language of law. She only knew the tone of men who spoke as if they were the weather. Commander Hale spoke soft to the room and harder to the captain. "Our claim is clear," he said through a translator. "The child is under our care by blood and by code. Return her, and there will be no trouble. Resist, and we will take what we must." The room held its breath. The captain tried to buy time. He proposed a hearing in 10 days and wrote it down in the log. The strangers agreed for now. They left with a patrol in orbit and a warning that sounded like a promise. Then the strangers did something small and sharp. They produced a data shard. It was the size of a coin, but it shone with deep code. When the Med-AI read it, the hollow spilled an image of cells and lines. Commander Hale put the shard on the table and let it glow. "This child carries a keel," he said. "A living pattern inside her. It is a pedigree and a memory. It will change those it meets. It cannot be left loose." Maya leaned forward. She was a medic who loved facts more than fear. She asked the machine to read the data again. The Med-AI translated with slow words: "Trace markers present. Pattern suggests memory map structure. Function, cultural transmission." Some heads went down. Others looked away. A young miner whispered, "You mean a virus?" The word moved like a small bird into the hall and everyone heard it and feared it. Commander Hale's voice dimmed and grew dangerous. "For us it is life. For you, it is unknown. We do not ask for war. We ask for the child." Ethan felt his hands go cold. He stood. He had no law on his side. He had only a blanket, a name, and the small hand that fit in his. He spoke into the room in a voice that shook but held. "She is a child," he said simply. "She did not ask to be here. She hurt. We are trying to help." A doctor from another ship called in by radio said the Med-AI could not be wrong about trace markers. The captain looked at his council and at the worn supplies. He saw faces that would sleep less well if they made enemies of a fleet. He weighed food against fear. During the hearing, a few of the strangers stepped to one side. One removed his helmet in the corner where the light did not reach. He was not cold like Commander Hale. His face was tired. He watched Lila and his eyes changed like someone who remembered a lost child at a distance. A translator picked up a soft line from him: "We do not wish to make you suffer. Let us talk." Ethan wanted to lean into that small mercy. He wanted law to meet mercy and make a bridge. But the hall had already filled with smaller fears. Mothers checked children. Men counted weapons in their heads. The Med-AI pushed another line into the log: "Risk unknown, emotional factors high." As night fell, people argued over the ration board and over the right to fear. Some said hand her over or the outpost would be burned for pride. Others whispered of the right to give a child a chance. Ethan stayed in the med bay. He watched Lila sleep and held the music box in his hand until its tune seemed to pull courage from the metal. Then the power cut came. At first it was only the lights. The hum of machines died and the med bay went a shade darker than the skin of the moon. The comm screens flicked and died like tired eyes. A breath of panic moved through the outpost. People stumbled toward lamps. The Med-AI registered the event and spat out a warning: "External interference detected. Systems degrade." The stranger's ship was over the horizon, bright as a blister against the sky. On the pad outside, a shuttle lowered with a whisper of metal. Ethan heard a boot on cold metal, and then another. The alarm that the crew had kept as a small red light on the wall finally woke. "Intruders breach at Gate 3, came the dry voice of security through the base. The sound hit the med bay like a hammer. Ethan felt his heart tighten. He rose, and for the first time that night he saw the outpost for what it was: a small island of people with thin shields facing a sea of ships. He looked at Lila. Her eyelashes fluttered in the dim. She clutched his finger. Outside, Boots fell faster. A new sound joined them, voices in a language the Med AI could not parse, but their rhythm told its meaning. They were not simply demanding. They were moving to take. Ethan tightened his grip and took one last look at the pile of ration cards he had signed away. Then he moved toward the door, past the med lights and into the dark hallway that led to Gate 3. The hollow of the outpost echoed with footsteps that were not all human. The hall door hissed open. Ethan stepped out and heard, clear as a bell, the translator on the stranger's chest say, in the same voice that had entered the hearing, "She is ours." The tunnel smelled like oil and old stone. They hid the scared and the brave. What lived inside the child was small and quiet until it woke. When it woke, the outpost learned that some secrets are bigger than one life. After the breach, the med bay became a shelter. Ethan and Maya led Lila down into the storage tunnels where old crates sat like sleeping boxes. The tunnels were narrow. The light was thin. The outpost built them years before for supply runs. Now they held people too. Maya set up a small table with the med kit. She worked fast and soft. Her hands moved with steady skill. The med AI hummed at the edge of her workstation. It had new questions. Its screen flashed images it could not name in plain words. It showed patterns that looked like maps and songs at once. Ethan sat beside Lila on a crate. She looked small in the dark. Her breath moved like a thin bell. Her eyes were open and bright. She held the old music box Ethan had given her. When she turned the tiny key, the tune spilled out like a single bright stone dropped in water. Maya scanned Lila again. The machine read the keel and tried to translate. It found layers inside the child's blood, not virus, not toxin, but strings of data that matched memory and pattern. The med AI printed one line and then refused to explain more. In small letters on the screen it wrote, "Pattern present, cultural keel." Ethan did not know the word. Maya did. She breathed slow. "A keel," she said softly. "It is like a living library. For some peoples it keeps memory safe across long times. But to us it is unknown. We must be careful." They had to be careful and they had to move fast. Outside, the strangers circled like gray birds. The outpost pushed power to the shields and tied down loose cargo. People who had never fired a gun wrapped their hands around tools that could end lives. The air tasted of fear and stubbornness. Maya tried to read the keel without touching Lila. The med AI linked to a small device and began to play back fragments. Images appeared: stones under running water, a hollow under a mountain, a door with 3 shapes. The device showed a place with seed stores and old machines, a vault hidden on a quiet planet. The keel hummed like a song in the med AI's wires. Commander Hale's voice cut into the tunnel on a hacked channel. "Return the subject," he said. "We will act differently if you refuse." Ethan looked at Lila. He asked no law to answer him. He only asked himself what kind of man he wanted to be. He thought of the river the keel showed, water that cleared dirt. He thought of the child's small hand that had trusted him. The strangers came again that night in greater number. They moved with a plan. Ethan and the outpost defenders met them at the pad with work drones and old drills repurposed as barricades. The air smelled of burned circuitry. For every gun the strangers brought, the outpost found a new clever way to fight back. Miners used steel beams to block doors. Engineers looped spare wires into trip lines. It was not a perfect defense, but it was human and stubborn. During a short lull, a stranger slipped into the tunnel alone. He wore no heavy armor this time. He seemed less like a soldier and more like a father lost far from home. He knelt before Lila with slow hands and said a word that bent like a willow. The med AI tried to pick up his voice and failed. Lila reached out and placed her small hand on his gloved palm. For a moment the room held its breath. Then the keel answered. It was not loud. It was not a boom. It was a glow in the med AI's readout and a small tide that ran across Lila's skin. The machine flashed a single word in bright letters. It was short and strange and absolute. Activated. Lights in the tunnel pulsed. Images on the Med-AI streamed faster. Coordinates blinked and then blurred like raindrops on a window. Lila's eyes changed. They were not frightened or angry. They looked calm, as if a child remembering an old song. Commander Hale screamed over the channel when he saw the readout. "Stop it," he barked. "Do not let them run the keel." But the keel had begun. The Med-AI translated more images, old maps, a series of stones placed around a hidden valley, a vault door that opened with a river's song. Pieces of a path spilled into the machine and into the room. The strangers leaned forward with hunger. The outpost clutched their tools like lifelines. Maya warned them all. "It is not only a map," she said. "It is knowledge that can change people. It can teach the mind new things. We cannot let fear decide what it will be used for." A low sound rose from the far end of the tunnel like a far engine waking. Outside, the strangers stirred their ships. On the horizon a new light blinked, not a ship's light but something like a distant flare. The Med-AI reported an incoming transmission, but it could not decode it. The keel hummed and then released a tiny pulse, a thread that reached into the air like a signal thrown into night. Ethan felt his throat close. He stood and pulled Lila closer. She looked at him and then at the stranger who had knelt. Her hand slipped from the stranger's glove and found Ethan's. The music box lay between them like a small piece. "Whatever it is," Ethan said to no one, "it belongs to her to decide." Before anyone could answer, the tunnel lights went white-hot for a breath. Screens flashed coordinates that the Med-AI could not place. A sound like a bell tolled under the outpost. Then the ground underfoot shivered, faint at first and then strong enough to make a bowl clatter on a crate. Far above, something unseen had answered the keel. The outpost that had tried to hide a child now sat at the heart of a signal no one had made. The room filled with people holding their breath. Outside, a low voice on the comm said, "Target acquired." Ethan tightened his grip on Lila's hand. He felt the world turn in a new way. The keel had opened a door that would not close by itself. When the keel woke, the outpost changed. Ships circled. Voices argued. A small hand chose what a fleet wanted. That choice would bend the future. Dawn came thin and gray. The outpost smelled of burned wires and hot coffee. People moved with tired faces. They had fought through the night and patched the worst damage. The stranger's ship still hung near the horizon like storm clouds. The trader's convoy that Ethan had radioed the night before was not yet in view. Time felt too short. Ethan woke in the med bay and found Lila awake. She sat on a crate, the music box open on her lap. Her small fingers traced the painted lid. The keel had shown maps and songs. It had shown a place with a vault and stones by a river. It had shown power and danger. She had seen it and still she smiled at him. Maya stood by with tired relief in her eyes. She had read the keel with care. She had argued for study and defended the right for knowledge to be shared. She had also done the work to keep Lila safe. Now she held an idea like a small bright tool. "We can make a council," Maya said. "Human and their delegates. Shared study. A neutral team. An expedition with rules. Oversight." Commander Hale had not liked the word council when Ethan first spoke it. His face had been hard and cold. But the strangers were not one voice. Some of them wanted laws, not war. Some of them wanted the keel to be used only by their people. When Hale saw Lila's eyes and the way the keel hummed in the Med-AI, he faced a choice to take by force and risk a war, or accept a slow path that might give both sides something. The captain signed a brief paper that morning. It said the outpost would host a neutral council for one cycle. It said Lila would join a joint expedition of scientists with equal voice. It said the keel data would be copied and stored under watch, not seized. In the trading lot, traders grumbled but nodded. The miners wanted to get back to work. Some still feared the strangers. But many felt pride. They had stood for a child when law and fear asked them to look away. The small island of metal in the black had made a bold choice. Ethan felt like a man with one good thing left to give. He had promised to watch Lila. He had held her through pain and kept his word. Now she was going on a journey. He packed a small bag with dry rations and put the music box inside. He found the river stone she had kept beneath her blanket. It was dull and smooth, as if polished by water. He slipped it into his palm. "You will come back," he told her, though he did not know. His voice was thin. He wanted to say more words that would make the world safe. But he had learned that some promises were small and true, not grand and empty. Lila stood and placed the music box in Ethan's hands. Her fingers were steady. She looked at him and said the first long sentence she had learned in both languages. Her voice was soft and clear now. "You gave me hope. I will not forget." The strangers watched from their shuttle. Commander Hale stepped forward and bowed his head in a small, awkward way. He said, through the translator, "We will travel together. We want to learn. We will not take." Not yet. The council formed. It was not perfect. It had shouting and doubt and long lists of small rules. But it had one new thing: human faces at the table. Traders, medics, miners, a few strangers who had tired of the hard law all watched as copies of the keel were stored in a secure drive with 3 keys, one kept by the strangers, one by the human captain, and one by an independent trader who would mediate. The expedition ship waited on the pad. It was painted in dull gray and bright hope. Scientists climbed aboard with small bags and large questions. Lila wore a simple suit that fit her small body. She held Ethan's hand for a long moment. He put the river stone in her palm. "Remember the river," he said. "It will teach you when you must decide." She nodded. Her eyes were not the frightened eyes from the crater any longer. They were steady and full of the weight of what she held inside her. The keel hummed low as if in agreement. The shuttle rose and the outpost watched it go. People cheered in a quiet way, not a loud victory, but a sound like breath released. Ethan stood at the gate and let the wind touch his face. He felt both empty and full. He had nothing large to give the galaxy, but he had kept one small life. Days after the shuttle left, messages came in trickles. The joint team sent regular logs and short images: a river that matched the keel's songs, stones set in careful order, a vault sealed beneath an old root. The strangers and humans learned to work together, slowly and sometimes wrongly, but with more care than either side had guessed possible. News reached trade hubs: a small outpost had stood up for a child. Traders whispered. Other stations listened. It was a small story, but it spread. People began to ask questions about rights and choice. The keel did not make an army. It taught songs and memory and ways to mend old broken things. Months later, a message arrived for Ethan from the expedition. Lila sent a short note in English and in her own tongue. She had learned, she wrote, songs to open doors and to heal small machines. She had met faces like hers and faces like his. She had chosen to learn first, and then to decide where she belonged. She sent a small line at the end that made Ethan read it twice. "You gave me a home to choose," she wrote. "I will come back." Ethan folded the note and put it with the river stone in his pocket. He walked back to the med bay and opened the music box. It still played the thin tune. He listened and felt the small hush of a beginning in his chest. The sky over Vireo 7 was the same black it had always been. But beneath that wide dark, people had made a choice that would ripple outward. The galaxy was full of strong hands and loud laws. But sometimes a soft hand, the hand of a simple man who would not look away, could change the story. Ethan stepped outside and watched the stars. He did not know what the future would bring. He only knew that a promise had been kept. That alone might be enough to make a new kind of power.